She walked through the quiet hallways of her high school, the hum of lockers and distant chatter forming a dull background to her thoughts. She had always felt a little out of place in this school. The students here had a rhythm she could never quite match. They laughed loudly, grouped together in ways that made her feel invisible, and moved through the halls with a confidence she hadn't yet learned to claim. Most of the time, she preferred it that way. Being quiet kept her safe. Being unnoticed kept her out of trouble. Her backpack rested lightly on one shoulder, almost like a shield, holding the small notebooks, pens, and sketch pads she carried everywhere. She loved drawing in the margins of her notebooks during lunch or in the back of the classroom when lessons felt slow. Drawing made her feel alive in a way the loud hallways never did. She could escape into lines and shapes, creating worlds where people understood her without words. She paused outside a classroom door, waiting for the bell to ring, feeling the familiar pulse of anxiety in her chest. Some days were easier than others, but today she could feel a weight she didn't want to face. The group of girls who had taken a particular dislike to her had been unusually quiet this morning. That worried her more than anything. She knew that when they were quiet, it usually meant they were planning something. She didn't have many friends at school, and that was okay most of the time, but in moments like these, the silence around her felt heavy. The bell finally rang, echoing through the corridors, signaling the start of a short break before the next class. She took a deep breath and began walking toward the bathroom, thinking about the sketches she had left behind on her desk. It was a small sanctuary where she could be herself, where the walls offered her a temporary escape from the outside world. The bathroom was nearly empty when she arrived, the faint smell of soap and the distant hum of water from a faucet filling the room. She moved to her favorite stall, the one in the far corner, feeling the cool tile under her shoes. Usually she could spend a few quiet moments alone here, gathering her thoughts or sketching in her mind. Today, though, something felt off. She sensed movement in the reflection on the bathroom mirror. At first, she tried to dismiss it as her imagination, but the sound of footsteps echoed differently than the usual passing students. The faint rustle of clothing behind her made her turn her head slightly. Her stomach tightened. A group of girls stepped into the bathroom. She had seen them in the halls before, laughing loudly and pulling pranks on other students. Their eyes found her immediately, and she could feel the cold intensity of their gaze. They didn't need words to make their presence threatening. They had cornered her, and she knew it. There was no way out except facing them directly or waiting for someone to intervene, and there was almost never anyone else around in the bathroom at this time. Her first instinct was to panic, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had learned over the years that panic only made situations worse. She could feel her heart beating fast, but she focused on her breathing, steadying herself. Her mind raced, thinking of ways to handle this without giving them the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. She couldn't fight them physically. She wasn't that kind of person. But maybe she could fight with her mind, with her wits. The tallest girl of the group stepped closer, smirking. Her friends flanked her, their expressions full of cruel amusement. They began circling, making jokes and trying to provoke a reaction. The quiet girl stood her ground, not showing fear. Every step they took seemed calculated to intimidate, to make her feel small. She could hear them whispering among themselves, guessing at her thoughts, trying to read her. But she refused to give them that satisfaction. She thought back to her father's words the night before. He had told her that people would try to make her feel less than she was, that the world could be cruel to those who were different. But he had also reminded her that strength didn't always mean fighting with your fists. Sometimes it meant standing tall when everyone expected you to crumble. She repeated that thought silently, letting it anchor her. The group moved closer, and one of the girls nudged her lightly. "Why do you always look so serious?" she sneered. "Lighten up, will you?" Another laughed, echoing the first. They expected her to react, to defend herself with words or tears. But she stayed quiet, her silence growing louder than their taunts. Silence was a weapon they hadn't anticipated. A moment passed, tense and thick, before the tallest girl leaned forward, trying to get under her skin. "What are you so scared of, huh? It's just us." The girl looked straight at her, waiting for a reaction. She met the gaze calmly, letting a quiet confidence seep through her eyes. She didn't flinch, didn't back down. In that moment, the dynamic began to shift. They weren't used to this. They expected fear, and they were met with something else entirely: strength. The quiet girl's mind raced. She had to think fast. She remembered the small things she had noticed about them in the past, the way they reacted to embarrassment, the way they tried to seem tough but faltered when challenged. Maybe she could use that knowledge. Maybe she could turn their expectations against them. She wasn't going to let them define her day or her sense of self. She took a small step to the side, breaking the immediate circle without breaking eye contact. The girls followed instinctively, thinking she might be trying to escape, but she didn't move away. Instead, she shifted slightly, positioning herself in a way that forced them to step closer to one another. The subtle maneuver confused them, and for a brief moment their coordinated intimidation faltered. She had created a small gap in their confidence, and she could feel it. One of the girls, frustrated, tried to push past her, but she held her ground. Her calm demeanor and measured movement seemed to frustrate the group more than anything else. They expected chaos, anger, or tears. Instead, she offered none. Her mind was clear, her body still. She became a puzzle they couldn't solve in the moment. The silence stretched on, broken only by the occasional laugh that lacked conviction. The quiet girl could feel the tension building, knowing this confrontation was not just about this moment. It was about every time they had tried to make her feel less than she was. Every taunt, every snicker in the hall, every exclusion she had endured flashed briefly in her mind. But instead of anger, she felt determination. She would not be defined by their cruelty. She would define herself. Suddenly, one of the girls shifted, clearly unsure of what to do next. The quiet girl noticed this hesitation and seized the opportunity. She opened her mouth not to beg or plead, but to speak plainly and confidently. Her words weren't loud or aggressive, but they carried weight. She pointed out the absurdity of their behavior, the way their own insecurities were showing through their attempts to intimidate her. The effect was immediate. The group faltered again, their expressions flickering with confusion and a touch of fear. They had expected her to react in the usual ways, but she had disrupted their expectations. She wasn't just a quiet girl anymore. She was someone who refused to be cornered by fear. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The bathroom, usually a place of temporary refuge, had become a stage for something larger. She realized she wasn't alone, not really. The lessons from her family, the quiet strength she had cultivated over years, were all here with her. She could feel her confidence growing, a slow but steady flame. This moment, small as it seemed, was a turning point. The group finally moved back, frustrated and unsure. They muttered insults that now felt empty, like the wind trying to push a mountain. The quiet girl stayed still, breathing steadily, letting the power of her calm presence do what words could not. When they finally left, slamming the bathroom door behind them, she felt a mix of relief and pride. She had faced them without yielding. She had protected herself in a way that didn't rely on aggression but on clarity, awareness, and courage. Alone again, she let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror, seeing herself not as the small, quiet girl who walked the halls unnoticed, but as someone capable of facing fear with strength. It wasn't a victory that the world would celebrate with cheers, but it was a deeply personal one, the kind that changed the way she viewed herself. She washed her hands slowly, savoring the ordinary motions that suddenly felt reassuring. The bathroom, once a place of potential danger, had become a place of realization. She had learned that standing firm, even in silence, could speak louder than words or actions. She felt a quiet power settling in her chest, a reminder that courage didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered in moments when the world expected her to scream. As she left the bathroom and returned to the hallway, she walked with a little more confidence. The bell had rung and students were moving to their next classes, unaware of the small but significant battle that had just taken place. She didn't need recognition or applause. The knowledge of what she had accomplished was enough. Today she had faced fear and emerged stronger, and that strength would carry her through whatever came next. The day continued and the hallways were bustling with students moving between classes. She walked with steady steps, her mind replaying the encounter in the bathroom over and over. Her chest still carried the tightness from the confrontation, but there was also a strange sense of relief. She had faced them, and for a brief moment she had felt in control. Still, the memory of their cold stares lingered, reminding her that high school was a place where cruelty often found its way. She entered the next classroom, sliding quietly into her seat at the back. The teacher began the lesson, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She remembered how the girls had surrounded her, their laughter echoing, The way they had leaned in close, trying to intimidate her. Every detail was vivid, their smirks, their whispers, their confidence. She kept her hands folded on the desk, listening half-heartedly, while her mind crafted a plan. She couldn't let this happen again. She needed to think ahead. During lunch, she found a quiet corner in the cafeteria. Most students had already claimed their usual tables, laughing and sharing stories, completely unaware of what had happened in the bathroom. She opened her notebook and began to sketch, her pencil moving rapidly over the paper. Drawing helped her think, helped her process emotions she didn't always know how to express. She drew lines and shapes, but her mind was working on strategy. She didn't want to fight, but she had to be prepared if the bullies decided to confront her again. As she sketched, she overheard whispers from the next table. Some students were talking about the bathroom incident. Her heart skipped a beat. The news had spread faster than she expected. She listened quietly, catching bits and pieces. Some spoke in admiration, others in disbelief. She realized that word of her standing up for herself had already reached others. She felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Being noticed was new territory, and she wasn't sure she was ready for all the attention. After lunch, she returned to her next class. The atmosphere felt different. Some students glanced at her with curiosity, others with respect. She caught the eye of a few classmates who had always seemed distant. Their looks now carried recognition, as if they were silently acknowledging her courage. It was a subtle shift, but it mattered. For the first time, she felt that standing up for herself might change more than just the immediate moment. Despite the small victories, she knew the bullies were still out there. She kept her senses sharp, moving through the halls with careful awareness. Every time she heard footsteps behind her, she instinctively checked, ready to react if needed. The day felt like a series of small challenges, each one a test of her resolve. But she faced them with a calm determination that surprised even herself. She was learning slowly how to navigate a world that sometimes seemed designed to make her feel small. After school, she stayed behind for art club. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could create without judgment. She set up her supplies and began a new project, losing herself in color and form. Painting allowed her to release emotions she couldn't put into words. The brushstrokes on the canvas were bold, confident, mirroring the courage she had discovered within herself earlier that day. The art room, filled with quiet chatter and the smell of paint, was a safe haven where her mind could breathe. As the evening light streamed through the windows, she noticed a few of her classmates from earlier approaching. They were hesitant at first, unsure how to approach her. One of them, a girl she had seen sitting alone in the cafeteria before, stepped forward. She smiled gently, offering words of encouragement. "I heard what happened today," she said softly. "That was really brave." The quiet girl felt a warm surge of gratitude. These words, simple as they were, carried weight. She had feared isolation, feared that standing up would only make things worse. But here was someone acknowledging her strength. A small connection formed in that moment, a reminder that courage could inspire understanding and friendship. The art club meeting ended, and she packed her supplies. Walking home, she reflected on the day. It had started with fear and uncertainty, yet it ended with a sense of empowerment. She realized that fear would always exist, but it didn't have to control her actions. The bullies could try to intimidate her, but they could not define who she was or what she was capable of. At home, she shared the day's events with her family. They listened intently, offering comfort and guidance. Her parents reminded her that courage wasn't about never feeling fear. It was about facing fear and moving forward. Their words resonated deeply. She felt their support as a shield, a reminder that she was not alone. Even when the hallways of her school felt hostile. That night she lay in bed, thinking about the confrontation and the lessons she had learned. Strength could be quiet and still. Confidence didn't always need to be loud. She felt a growing determination to continue standing up for herself, to navigate the world with awareness and courage. She realized that each challenge she faced was an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become more resilient. In the days that followed, she noticed small changes around her. Some students approached her with newfound respect. Others offered quiet smiles of encouragement. The bullies, while still present, seemed more cautious, unsure of how to provoke her next. She felt a sense of control, a realization that her actions could influence the environment around her. She wasn't just reacting to fear anymore. She was shaping her own experience. School life continued with its usual rhythm, But she moved through it differently now. She walked with a subtle confidence, aware of her surroundings but not consumed by them. She continued her art, her studies, and her quiet moments of reflection, all the while growing stronger in ways that weren't always visible to others. The experience in the bathroom had been a turning point, a lesson in courage that would shape her choices for years to come. She also began to notice the importance of allies, of even small gestures of support. A kind word, a glance of understanding, or a shared laugh could shift the balance in difficult situations. She realized that connection mattered, that standing up for oneself didn't have to be a solitary act. She began to reach out subtly, offering small signs of kindness to others who seemed isolated. In doing so, she found that courage could ripple outward, creating strength not only for herself but for those around her. As the week went on, she felt more prepared for any future confrontations. She knew that fear would still exist, that bullies could still try to intimidate her. But she had discovered a quiet power within herself. She had learned that standing still, thinking clearly, and acting with intention could turn moments of fear into opportunities for growth. The experience had changed her perception of herself and of the world, revealing a resilience she hadn't fully recognized before. By the end of the week, she felt a subtle but profound shift. The quiet girl who once tried to go unnoticed had become someone who understood her own strength. She didn't need to announce it to the world. She carried it quietly, firmly, like a secret shield that no one could take away. The hallways of the school were still filled with noise and chaos, but she moved through them with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges came next. The morning felt different when she walked into school. There was a quiet energy in the air, a sense that things were changing. She felt it in the way some students glanced at her, in the subtle nods of acknowledgement from classmates who had always seemed distant. She carried herself with a new sense of purpose, her back straighter, her steps more deliberate. The memory of the bathroom confrontation was still vivid, but it no longer filled her with fear. Instead, it reminded her of the strength she had discovered within herself. Her first class passed without incident. She sat at the back as usual, but this time she noticed the subtle shifts around her. Some students who had once ignored her now whispered quietly to one another when they saw her. She didn't seek attention, but she felt a quiet power in knowing that people were watching and reassessing her. She focused on the lesson, but her mind kept returning to the idea that she had control over how she responded to challenges. During the mid-morning break, she decided to go to the library. It was her favorite place in the school. A quiet refuge filled with books, soft lighting, and the faint smell of old pages. She moved past the crowded hallways and entered the calm space, feeling relief wash over her. She found a corner table and opened a book, letting herself sink into the story. The library was a place where she could think, plan, and breathe. As she read, she noticed the same group of girls who had confronted her in the bathroom enter the library. They didn't seem surprised to see her. They walked confidently, their usual air of dominance intact, but this time she felt no fear. She closed her book slowly, keeping her gaze neutral, and continued reading as if they were not there. Their eyes flicked to her, searching for any sign of weakness, but she remained composed. She had learned that her calmness could disarm them in ways words often could not. One of the girls approached her table, leaning slightly to peer at her book. "So you're really just going to sit there and read?" she asked, her tone dripping with mockery. The quiet girl looked up slowly, meeting her gaze steadily. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a deep breath, considering her words carefully. When she spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "I am. You don't have to understand it." The response caught the girl off guard. She had expected a reaction, maybe fear or an apology, but not calm defiance. Her friends exchanged confused glances, unsure how to respond. The quiet girl continued to read, her body language relaxed but assertive. She was no longer just defending herself. She was setting boundaries. This was her space, her moment, and she would not allow anyone to take it from her. The tallest girl tried another tactic. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only she could hear. "You think you're better than us now?" she sneered. The quiet girl didn't flinch. She met the gaze calmly, letting the silence speak. Sometimes saying nothing could be more powerful than any words. The girl stepped back slightly, frustrated, and her friends followed, unsure how to proceed. Seeing their hesitation, the quiet girl decided to take a subtle but bold step. She closed her book and looked up, her eyes meeting each of theirs in turn. "You can try to scare me, but it won't work," she said quietly. "You only show what you really are when you try to bring someone down." Her words were measured, calm, and carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. The group faltered. They hadn't expected such clarity and confidence. Their usual tactics relied on intimidation and mockery, but now they faced someone who refused to play by their rules. The quiet girl had turned the situation around without raising her voice or resorting to anger. She had taken control of the interaction simply by standing firm and speaking her truth. One of the girls, frowning, muttered something under her breath and walked away. The others lingered for a moment, unsure whether to stay or leave. The quiet girl remained seated, maintaining her composure. She had learned that courage didn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes it meant standing your ground and letting others reveal themselves. The group eventually left the library, their presence fading but their impact lingering in the unspoken acknowledgement of her strength. After they left, she returned to her book, but her mind was still active. She realized that this was more than just an isolated confrontation. It was a turning point. She had discovered a way to face intimidation without losing herself. Her confidence had grown not from defeating them physically, but from understanding her own power and the way she could influence the situation. The rest of the day passed with a mix of normal routines and subtle awareness. She noticed small glances of admiration from classmates, smiles of recognition from students who had witnessed her composure, and even a quiet nod from a teacher who had heard about the incident. These moments were small but meaningful. They reinforced the idea that strength could be quiet and understated, yet still profoundly impactful. During lunch, she chose a seat near the window, away from the crowded tables. She ate slowly, savoring the food and the rare moments of peace. Some students approached cautiously, offering polite conversation. She responded with gentle curiosity, finding comfort in the small connections forming around her. The experience in the library had not only shifted her perception of herself, but also the way others began to perceive her. She was learning that courage could ripple outward, influencing the world around her in subtle ways. After school, she stayed behind for her art club again. The room was quiet except for the soft scratch of pencils and the faint smell of paint. She began a new project, pouring her emotions into the canvas. The colors were bold, the lines deliberate, reflecting the inner strength she had discovered. Each stroke of the brush felt like a declaration of her resilience, a reminder that she was capable of standing firm in the face of adversity. As she painted, a few students who had previously ignored her approached quietly. They offered compliments and gentle encouragement, acknowledging the skill and thoughtfulness in her work. She accepted the praise with a small, genuine smile, feeling a sense of connection she hadn't experienced before. These interactions were subtle, yet they reinforced the idea that courage could create change, not just for oneself, but for those around you. Walking home, she reflected on the day's events. The confrontation in the library had been a test, and she had passed it with composure and clarity. She understood that fear would always be present, but it didn't have to dictate her actions. She could face challenges with awareness and strength, using her mind and presence as tools to navigate difficult situations. Each step she took felt lighter, more purposeful, as if she were walking toward a version of herself she had only just begun to understand. At home, she shared the day's events with her family, recounting the encounter with the bullies and the way she had handled it. They listened attentively, offering support and encouragement. Her parents reminded her that true courage wasn't about confrontation for the sake of winning. It was about maintaining integrity, protecting oneself, and acting with thoughtfulness. Their words resonated deeply, reinforcing the lessons she had learned throughout the day. That night, she lay in bed, thinking about the confrontations, the subtle victories, and the growth she had experienced. She realized that strength could be quiet and steady, that confidence didn't always need to be loud or forceful. She felt a sense of empowerment, a calm assurance that she could face challenges and navigate the complexities of her school environment without losing herself. In the days that followed, the ripple effects of her courage became more apparent. Some students approached her with quiet admiration. Others offered gestures of kindness she hadn't expected. The bullies, while still present, seemed more hesitant, unsure of how to provoke her next. She felt a growing sense of control, understanding that her actions could influence the environment around her. She was no longer simply reacting to fear. She was shaping her own experience. She continued to move through her school days with awareness and purpose. Her art, her studies, and her quiet moments of reflection all became tools for growth and resilience. She had learned that courage was not a single act but a series of choices, each one reinforcing her sense of self and her ability to navigate a challenging world. By the end of the week, she felt a profound shift. The quiet girl who once moved through the halls unnoticed had become someone who understood her own strength and influence. She didn't need recognition or applause. She carried her courage quietly, firmly, like an invisible shield that no one could take away. The hallways of her school, once filled with uncertainty and fear, now felt like spaces she could navigate with confidence, ready to face whatever challenges awaited her next. The days after the library incident passed in a mixture of normal routines and subtle change. She moved through the halls with an awareness that wasn't there before. Students whispered in corners, their eyes flicking toward her as they passed. Some offered small nods or quiet smiles, acknowledging the quiet courage she had displayed. Even teachers seemed to notice a shift. She didn't seek attention, but she realized that her actions had sparked respect, and perhaps even inspiration. The bullies were still present, still moving through the school with their usual confidence, but she noticed a difference. They were more cautious, less certain. The calculated intimidation they had relied on seemed to falter whenever she was near. She wasn't afraid, and that made them unsure. They had expected to provoke reactions, but she had shown them that control was hers, not theirs. This subtle change altered the dynamic not just between them, but in the classroom and hallways as well. During lunch, she chose a different table, one near the window with a few students she had started to recognize as friendly faces. They weren't close friends yet, but there was a sense of mutual respect and understanding. Conversations were quiet and thoughtful, filled with curiosity and genuine interest rather than judgment or mockery. She realized that courage could create new connections, that standing firm in difficult moments could draw people in rather than push them away. A teacher approached her table that day, a gentle smile on their face. "I heard about what happened in the library," they said quietly. "You handled yourself with a lot of composure. That takes strength." She thanked them softly, feeling the warmth of recognition. It wasn't the kind of applause that came with a trophy or a loud announcement, but it was meaningful. It reminded her that her actions mattered, and that integrity could resonate in ways that were quiet but profound. Later in the day, she had a free period and chose to sit in the courtyard. The sunlight was warm on her skin, and the gentle breeze carried the distant sound of laughter from other students. She took out her sketch pad, drawing lines and shapes as she reflected on the week. Each stroke of her pencil felt like a continuation of the courage she had discovered. She thought about how small actions could ripple outward, how her choices could influence others without her even speaking a word. Some classmates approached cautiously, observing her work from a distance before sitting nearby. They asked questions about her art, and she responded with thoughtful answers, feeling a sense of connection forming. These interactions were subtle but significant. She realized that courage could create a bridge to understanding and empathy. Her confidence had not only protected her but had opened the door to new friendships and allies. The bullies still watched from a distance sometimes, but their presence was less threatening. They whispered among themselves, trying to decide how to respond, but they were unsure. She understood that her calm assertiveness had disrupted their usual strategies. By refusing to react with fear or aggression, she had taken away the power they thought they held. It was a quiet victory, one that would continue to shape her school environment. During a class discussion, she noticed a few students glancing at her with admiration. She participated thoughtfully, offering ideas and observations without seeking attention. Her voice was steady and clear, reflecting the confidence she had built over the past days. The teacher nodded approvingly, acknowledging her input. She felt the satisfaction of being heard and respected for her thoughts, not just for the courage she had displayed. At home, she shared the events of the week with her family. They listened carefully, offering guidance and encouragement. Her parents reminded her that the way she handled challenges could influence more than just her immediate situation. Her actions could inspire others to act with integrity and courage, creating a ripple effect of positive change. She thought about this as she reflected on her own experiences, realizing that her small acts of bravery had already begun to shift the dynamics around her. The following day, she noticed a subtle change in the school culture. Some students who had previously been silent or distant now approached her with quiet support. They shared experiences of their own, moments when they had felt powerless or intimidated. She listened, offering empathy and understanding. The courage she had displayed had become a point of connection, allowing others to see that standing up for oneself could be done with calm determination, rather than anger or confrontation. Even the bullies were beginning to adjust. They were still present, still attempting to assert control, but they approached with caution. Their usual strategies were less effective, and their confidence was waning. She observed this without satisfaction or malice, understanding that their behavior reflected their own insecurities. Her focus remained on maintaining her own integrity and confidence, recognizing that true strength came from within, not from the fear of others. Art Club continued to be a sanctuary. She poured her experiences into her projects, each piece reflecting a mix of emotion, thought, and personal growth. Fellow students observed her work, offering quiet compliments and thoughtful questions. These interactions reinforced her sense of community and connection. She realized that courage could not only protect her, but also inspire creativity, dialogue, and mutual respect among those around her. Walking home one afternoon, she noticed a younger student being teased in the hallway. Memories of her own experiences surfaced, but instead of fear, she felt determination. She approached calmly, standing near the student and offering quiet support. The bullies were nearby, but her presence alone seemed to create a buffer. The younger student looked up at her with gratitude, feeling safe in her calm authority. She realized that courage was not only about protecting oneself, but also about standing for others when they needed support. That evening, she reflected on the week's events. Each moment of courage, each quiet act of assertiveness had shaped her environment in subtle but meaningful ways. She understood that strength wasn't always visible or loud. It could be quiet, steady, and profoundly influential. She felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that her choices had created a ripple effect, influencing not only the bullies but also classmates and even younger students. The days that followed continued in a similar pattern. She moved through her school with awareness, calm, and confidence. Her art, her studies, and her quiet reflections became tools for resilience and growth. She noticed the subtle ways in which her actions influenced others, inspiring courage and integrity in small but meaningful ways. Even when the bullies attempted to provoke her, she met their presence with calm strength, showing that true power lay in self-awareness and composure. By the end of the week, she felt a deep sense of transformation. The quiet girl who once navigated the hallways with fear had become someone who understood her own strength and influence. She didn't need recognition or loud praise. She carried her courage quietly, firmly, like an invisible shield that allowed her to move through the world with confidence and purpose. The hallways of her school, once filled with uncertainty and tension, now felt like spaces she could navigate with assurance, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Her family noticed the change as well. They saw her growing confidence, her ability to navigate complex social situations, and her willingness to support others. They reminded her that her strength was not just about facing bullies, but about maintaining integrity, empathy, and self-respect. These lessons resonated deeply, reinforcing her understanding that courage was multifaceted, encompassing both personal empowerment and the positive influence one could have on others. Through these experiences, she learned that small actions could create meaningful change. Her calm assertiveness in the face of intimidation had altered her school environment, inspired classmates, and even challenged the behavior of the bullies. She realized that courage was not a single act but a continuous practice, a way of navigating life that combined awareness, empathy, and resilience. Each day she felt stronger, more confident, and more capable of facing challenges with grace and determination. The ripple effect of her courage continued to grow. Students who had previously been silent now felt empowered to speak up in their own ways. Teachers noticed the subtle shift in classroom dynamics, recognizing the importance of fostering an environment of respect and support. Even the bullies, while still present, were forced to reconsider their approach, their usual tactics less effective against someone who refused to be intimidated. The quiet girl had not only protected herself but had also influenced the broader community in ways that were profound, lasting, and meaningful. The final weeks of the school year brought with them a sense of closure and growth. She moved through the hallways with confidence that had become second nature. The small moments of fear that had once seemed overwhelming had been replaced with a quiet strength. Students who had once ignored her now greeted her with polite nods and smiles. Teachers observed her with respect, noticing the thoughtful way she interacted with both her studies and her peers. She had become a quiet leader, someone others could look to for calm and composed guidance. Even the bullies had begun to shift in their behavior. They were still present, but their previous intimidation tactics were less effective. Some students noticed that they now seemed more cautious, careful with their words and actions around her. Her calm, unwavering presence had shown them that strength did not always need to be loud or aggressive. It was a subtle yet powerful transformation that influenced the environment of the school as a whole. One afternoon, as she walked to her art club, she noticed a small group of younger students huddled near the lockers, whispering anxiously. They looked uncomfortable, clearly facing some kind of intimidation from older students. Without hesitation, she approached them calmly. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Their faces lit up with relief, and they explained the situation. She listened attentively, offering words of reassurance and gentle guidance. Her presence alone seemed to ease their fear. She showed them that courage wasn't about confrontation alone. It was about standing with integrity and protecting those who couldn't stand for themselves. After helping the younger students, she entered the art room and began a new project. Her paintings had become more expressive over time, reflecting the journey she had undergone. Each brushstroke carried emotion and strength. Other students in the club noticed and admired her dedication and talent. She answered their questions patiently, sharing insights without boasting. Her quiet confidence was inspiring, drawing others toward a sense of creativity and self-assurance. During class discussions, she became more engaged. She spoke up thoughtfully, contributing ideas that were considered and clear. Her classmates listened, often nodding in agreement or adding to her thoughts. She had transformed from the quiet girl who once tried to stay unnoticed into someone who shaped discussions with calm authority. She realized that being heard didn't mean being loud. It meant speaking with honesty and purpose. At home, she shared her experiences with her family. They were proud of her growth, and they reminded her that courage was not just about standing up to bullies, but also about maintaining empathy, integrity, and patience. She reflected on these lessons deeply, understanding that true strength included guiding and uplifting others. Her family's support reinforced the confidence she had cultivated and inspired her to continue using her presence to positively impact those around her. One day, the principal asked to speak with her privately. She walked into the office feeling a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The principal smiled warmly and explained that her actions and composure had not gone unnoticed. They spoke about how her behavior had influenced the school culture positively, encouraging respect, awareness, and empathy among students. The quiet girl felt a sense of validation, not from recognition, but from knowing that her strength had a meaningful effect on others. Word spread among students about the quiet girl who had faced intimidation with courage and composure. Some younger students began to emulate her behavior, learning that standing firm and acting with integrity could create change. Her influence extended beyond her immediate circle, reaching those who were quietly struggling to find their own voice. She became an example not through loud proclamations but through the consistency of her actions and the clarity of her character. As the school year drew to a close, she reflected on her journey. She remembered the bathroom confrontation, the library incident, and the ripple effects that had followed. She had faced fear repeatedly, and each time she had chosen calm, thoughtful action over panic or aggression. She realized that courage was not a single moment but a series of choices, each one reinforcing her confidence and shaping her environment positively. In the final week, the school organized an end-of-year exhibition for student artwork. She displayed her projects, each one reflecting not only her talent but also the journey she had undergone. Students, teachers, and parents moved through the exhibition, admiring the work and often pausing to comment on the depth and thoughtfulness displayed. She interacted quietly with those who showed interest, offering explanations of her technique and inspiration without seeking excessive attention. Her humility and calm presence left a lasting impression on all who viewed her work. During the exhibition, one of the younger students she had helped earlier approached her. "Thank you," the student said softly. "You showed me that it's okay to stand up and be confident." She smiled gently, feeling warmth and pride in that moment. She realized that the courage she had cultivated was now inspiring others, continuing the ripple effect she had begun months earlier. After the exhibition, she walked through the empty hallways, reflecting on how much had changed. She thought about the bullies and the challenges she had faced. She understood that strength came not from aggression, but from awareness, composure, and integrity. She had learned to navigate difficult situations with confidence and to influence her environment positively through calm, thoughtful action. The hallways that once felt intimidating now seemed familiar and navigable, spaces where she could move with assurance and purpose. As the school year ended, she felt a sense of accomplishment and growth. She had faced challenges that tested her courage and had emerged stronger, more self-aware and more capable of helping others. Her experiences had taught her the value of quiet strength, the importance of empathy, and the impact that individual actions could have on a broader community. She carried these lessons with her, knowing that they would guide her in future challenges and opportunities. The quiet girl who once tried to remain unnoticed had transformed into a young woman who understood her own power, her influence, and her potential. She didn't need recognition or applause. She had gained something far more valuable: self-assurance, empathy, and the ability to face life's challenges with courage. Her journey was a testament to the impact of thoughtful action, the strength of resilience, and the power of standing firm in the face of adversity. As she left the school for the last time that year, she walked with steady steps, her head held high. She reflected on the growth she had experienced, the connections she had made, and the influence she had had on others. She knew that the lessons she had learned would stay with her, guiding her as she moved forward into new experiences, challenges, and opportunities. Her story was one of quiet triumph, personal growth, and the enduring impact of courage, integrity, and empathy.